Mr. Cote, a very good morning to you.
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. So there are so many pressing issues that are going on, and with the growth in population and the demand for transit. Now, one of the major projects in this part of the region is the Surrey-Langley Skytrain extension, and that has been in the news about the delay in the project. So now we won't have the project ready until 2028. And there are also reports that this cannot really be labeled as a delay. Why is that?
Yeah, well, I don't think this is a delay. It's actually just a clarification of the timeline. About 3 years ago, when we were first looking at changing the light rail program to SkyTrain along Fraser Highway, we looked at a couple of estimates. One was actually to complete SkyTrain all the way to Langley by 2030, but the hope was to do it in phases and actually be able to complete SkyTrain to Fleetwood by 2026. Now, fast forward a couple of years, and the provincial government has made a commitment to support the project and to see the project done in one phase altogether, which means it's a different project than the original timeline. And to be able to complete both projects together, the timeline's been adjusted to 2028.
How much of money will be saved because the two phases will now be started and done at the same time?
Yeah, so, I don't have an exact figure, but no doubt it is a lot more efficient to be able to construct the project in one phase than to two separate phases, because in that scenario, you'd be setting up the construction crew doing the procurement, and then they would wind down, stop, and then you would start it all over again when you receive funding for the second phase. So we definitely think there's a lot of efficiencies that are going to be gained by doing this in one phase.
So when the Surrey Mayor, Doug McCallum, says that this is frustrating about the delay, what you're also saying is that he should not be frustrated. Rather, this is not something which was totally unexpected.
No, I think, certainly I think that was probably just a misunderstanding there in terms of how the time was adjusted. And I think recognizing this is also talking about the SkyTrain project all the way to Langley. But the reality is I think this is actually really good news for south of the Fraser. This is a major SkyTrain project. Right now, SkyTrain really only gets 4 stations into the city of Surrey, and this will really connect all the way into Langley and have a significant rapid transit connection to south of the Fraser. So, to me, I think having all 3 levels of government showing their support and committing to this project and getting it all done in one phase, I actually think that's a really positive news, not only for south of the Fraser River, but for the Metro Vancouver region as a whole.
So, Mayor Cote, this project will now be taken over by the Ministry of Transportation, and the province is doing its own business case analysis on the project. How much of a time is that going to take, and how is that coordination going on between TransLink and the provincial government?
Yeah, so the TransLink and the provincial government work very closely on these transportation infrastructure projects. It's not unusual for the provincial government to take the lead in building this through the Ministry of Transportation. Even the SkyTrain extension to Arbutus along Broadway is also being done by the provincial government. So it is a fairly typical for this type of project. No doubt, TransLink obviously will be the operator of the SkyTrain once it's complete, and is very involved in the planning and design. But I actually think it makes a lot of sense for the Ministry of Transportation to be taking a lead on the construction of the project.
Also, Mayor, now once this project is complete, there are also other regions within the area. For example, the Newton area or South Surrey. There is a lack of connectivity for these regions. Is there anything in the works or anything being planned in the coming years to, say, connect South Surrey in a much better way to the rest of the transit system?
Yeah, so definitely there are a number of corridors south of the Fraser River, and I think King George and Scott Road are probably the 2 main corridors that are really standing out in terms of increased ridership and demand going into the future there. So I think those will be definitely 2 corridors we're going to be focusing on. The mayors are currently working on a revision of our mayor's 10-year plan to kind of really say, after the current projects that are currently under the works, what are the next big priorities? And I think those two corridors are going to get some attention. I think in the short term, we're already working on implementing a rapid bus on the Scott Road corridor. There already is a rapid bus on the King George corridor, but I think those are two definite areas as we move into the future that are definitely going to warrant improvements in transportation infrastructure.
But there's been a lot of talk in the past as well about cities being able to diversify their streams of revenue, that property taxes should not be the only source from where cities get the money for their budgets. What sort of progress is happening on that front, and what can really be done to diversify those streams of revenue for the cities in the province?
Yeah, well, that's been a long-standing issue with cities who really have a very limited tax base of just having to rely mainly on property taxes, and it does make it difficult for individual cities, but it also makes it difficult for, say, a region to plan major transportation infrastructure that we need there. So, it's been a long-standing desire to work with the provincial government to explore some new revenue tools that might make it more sustainable, to make sure we're making the right investments in our cities. So, I think in the short term, there's I think no indication about immediate opportunities, but the provincial government has made a commitment that over the next few years they are going to be exploring different options through UBCM about funding sources for cities in British Columbia, and I'm really hopeful that some serious work can come out of that can really put cities in a better financial footing.
Also, Mayor Cote, about New West's downtown, it's got a lot of challenges of its own. Many businesses left during the pandemic, and storefronts are boarded up, and those are posing a challenge to the aesthetics of the area. Business are having a tough time attracting customers. There's a lot of construction going on as well in that area. What's your plan to revitalize New West's downtown core? Yeah,
well, downtown New Westminster is obviously a really important part in our community. And, I think we've actually made a lot of progress over the past decade in seeing the revitalization of downtown New Westminster. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has really had an impact not only on downtown New Westminster, but a lot of downtown environments as we've seen office workers, not necessarily return to those areas as they were before the pandemic. We've also seen increased challenges with homelessness, and I think those issues combined with some of the difficult economics of some of the retail has challenged some of those areas there. So it is definitely an area that that we want to focus on, because we think before the pandemic, downtown New Westminster had some really good momentum. We built Pier Park and Anvil Centre, two really great civic facilities in our downtown, and we want to get that momentum back. So, I think we want to work with the business community there, see what we can do from even just kind of a beautification and cleaning aspect, but also work with property owners and deal with some of the vacant sites and see if we can encourage some redevelopment to happen on those sites and really kind of gain back that momentum that we had before the pandemic.
Mayor Cote, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Okay, well, thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.